listening to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partner Show. It is a podcast. We're also Talk Radio and iHeart, so look us up on the podcast platforms, Deezer, Spotify, and all of those that are through iHeart. Jeannie, this is going to be an interesting subject, and we are sponsored today by PloopBags.com. It is a fully flushable dog waste bag. You can also use it for cat waste, and it's trying to combat some of the feces, the dog waste that is being left on the ground. It might be an easier way for people to decide to pick the dog waste up. According to statistics, 40% plus in a lot of areas, people do not pick up the dog waste, and it winds up in the water system, our drinking water system. I don't want to sensationalize it, but I've read so many studies about that here in South Florida, in the estuaries, the lagoons, the Everglades, those kind of things. So you might want to think about that. PloopBags.com might be an easier way for you to get rid of the dog waste. Jeannie, we're talking about paid patient advocates. And those are ones that we hire ourselves, or we're talking about also the ones that are put in place for us by the facilities?
Well, the ones put in place by the facilities are, of course, paid by the facility.
Right.
So, yeah. But, I mean, there are places where you as a patient can go out and hire your own person, but you need to be aware. You need to know if they have any conflicts of interest.
Okay.
And that is, do they receive financial incentives from industry funding, personal relationships that interfere with their duty to prioritize your best interest, commissions from providers promoting specific treatments, or accepting industry funding. Now, they did a study, and they have found that over 80% of these paid patient advocacy groups receive funding from the medical industry, which can then cause bias towards certain products over the patient's well-being. They have also found out that if you go and ask, to be referred to one of these paid advocates, that there might be referral fees that they're getting.
Oh, wow. So this is corrupted now as well, or what do we know?
Yeah. And they have found out that some advocates operate as a for-profit company selling specialized services or steering patients towards specific clinical trials for financial gain, and blurred professional lines where they become too familiar with the patient or the patient's family. They accept gifts or act as a healthcare proxy, and that can cloud their professional judgment. So, I mean, there's a whole, ball of, or can of worms, whatever, that, a lot of people don't think of. You have to be aware. You have to do your homework on your advocate that you're wanting to hire. You need to also make sure that the fees, the training, and everything like that, any financial stakes, that is all transparent. You should know how much they're going to charge up front. You want to know if they have training, where did they get it from. You want to know about informed consent. If a potential conflict exists, then the advocate must disclose it to you, and they should provide written consent so that you have it in writing. So, ethical codes, you need to know if they're receiving any kind of compensation from providers. And the other thing is, if a lot of nurses and such are going into this, you need to know, well, where did they used to work? Is there a bias for a certain hospital system or whatever? You need to know that. So there's just so much, Cindy, and to me, it makes everything so much complicated, because things that you don't want to think about, that you are hiring someone to help you, may not actually be helping you, but helping themselves and helping, the other side, so to speak.
Yeah, when you and I got involved in all of this, it was one of the things, and this is like how many years? 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 10 years, Jeannie. Mm-hmm. This was our go-to. This was the thing that we championed, because at least we'll have somebody there next to us, because we're paying them, and therefore that they should be aligned with us and they should be our safety net. And now some of the stuff you're bringing up is that now that's being corrupted. from what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
That if you don't
Yeah.
do your due diligence as the patient hiring these advocates, I am ecstatic that they're allowed into the situation, the medical situation, because you and I heard that from the get-go that no way is that ever going to be allowed. It's a conflict of interest. We
Right.
don't want those people standing in the OR with us, blah, 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 blah. Well, what do? I mean, it's like when you're in jail and it's not the same thing, but along the same lines, don't you hire a lawyer that goes with you? I mean, you can defend yourself if you want to, right? But what's the same crossover scenario in the medical community? We are supposed to trust implicitly, but we found that every podcast that you and I do, Jeannie, and all the research you do, how many times can we not do that? We can't trust implicitly anymore. There's just, you just can't do it in this day and age. So what is our go-to to get help for ourselves? We have to have something that breeds discontent. Because now you're walking in with your quote unquote person by your side. So you don't trust me as a doctor? Well, we're trying to, but prove to us that we can anymore. It's really sad. It's like, prove that you're innocent anymore, almost. As opposed to, unprove you're guilty or however you want to word it. But I don't want to live in that world. I don't. But something's forcing me to live that way because I've put too much trust into it as the patient. And how many times do I get slapped down? How many podcasts that we do about abuse, sexual assault, those kind of things. We did one about ICU and the poor care in ICUs. I've had that statement backed up by a couple of nurses actually, that used to work in ICUs and say, I cannot do it any longer ethically because the people are not getting the care. It goes on and on and on. I mean, how do we help ourselves? How do we help other patients that listen to these podcasts? And I thank everyone for listening to these. There are many people that do. And you, Jeannie and I, we appreciate that. And we're trying to get to the bottom of it, too, and trying to get the information out there. On the other hand, there are millions of people that are doing the right thing around the world in these healthcare situations. And I love every one of you for doing that. But you have to out the ones that aren't. Sadly, we can't name names and we can't name situations we can without names, and we can't name facilities and things like that. I wish we could, but we can't. Innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
But, we did the podcast a while ago about the 84 women. They had the opportunity, the powers that be, to suspend that license, and they made the choice not to do that. And more women got assaulted.
Yeah.
That case is still getting figured out. Yeah.
Yeah, that brings me back to these hospital advocates that you and I both have dealt with. They're called patient advocates or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, right off, that they have conflict of interest because they cannot easily advocate against their own employer.
Right.
So most of the time, they're going to try to be finding ways to silence the one with the complaint, the patient, because the employer signs their paycheck. So I mean, I have never heard anything positive that I can remember from any other person who has had them to deal with.
Us included.
I know you didn't have a good experience.
Right. Us included.
Yeah.
My interview is what information they could get to rip apart my case. My own personal, that's what happened to me. That's my opinion. That's what happened. I saw it happen. I listened to it the same with you. Other people that help us in this whole cause, same thing happened to them. They want to rip your case apart to say, this is what was wrong with that, and you're wrong.
Yeah. And in my opinion, most of the time, I feel that the patient advocate hired by the hospital is not going to be your advocate.
Right.
They're going to advocate more for the hospital system than for the patient.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Yep.
So
mine too. And we talk about, and we only got a couple of seconds left. We talk about not the chaperones, the people that are in the office also with you in intimate procedures, that they are hired by the doctor. They work for the doctor. They work for the office. And when push comes to shove, the doctor, the nurse, whoever else comes into question, that third party, fourth party, whatever, is going to stick up for them more so than they are for the patient. So you have to stick up for yourself and get as much information as you possibly can. That's what we try to do. And at the end of the day, we don't always get great health care either. On that note, stay listening to Evergreen Media Network.